Well, you know Act 1 and Act 2 have both been found unconstitutional. Act 2, because the MFP in the Constitution says specifically that it's for public education. Well, now the Bessie has done an end run on that, and they've taken out the wording that it's for public education, solely for public education, and they're sending that to the legislature. Doesn't get passed, but that's what they've done. Act 1, you remember that was all the hideous language that was impacted teachers on tenure and value added, and a myriad of the superintendent and the principal hires and fires, and I can't think of the reduction in force, taking out seniority, the tenure piece, all that pieces were in there. It was also found unconstitutional. It was found unconstitutional because in an act can only, the title of the act, what's in the act has to represent the title of the act. Well, this had 14 different pieces in it that were a variety of different things in there. And it was just a whole, kit and caboodle of different things that were unrelated. So Judge Caldwell has said that is unconstitutional. That will go to the Supreme Court on March the 19th. March 19th next week. We suspect that it will still be unconstitutional. I don't see how it can suddenly not be because of the way it's written. The reason it got found unconstitutional is because there was a genuine act in the state legislature that if you started to define them the way that was defined, and I'm not saying that appropriately, help me out, Shannon. If you try to define it, Latasha, if you try to define it...
There's a subject and a title. So, the subject is supposed to talk about the object of the bill, and there's supposed to be one object per bill. But this, you can count, there's at least 8 or more different objects, things that it was trying to change. Well, that's too much in one piece of legislation. If I want to change a cake, I want to do one ingredient. So it was that kind of thing. But what they at first thought, they had the subject and title confused. And if they had kept the ruling the way he did it the first time, it would have changed years' worth of legislation.
And so that's why they were compelled to have to go back. Now, what do we think they will? It's kind of like what she's saying, like if they pass a law that you have to have your lights on of your car, but they also said the sales tax has to go up. You can't put a bunch of random things in one bill. And that's what they did. They rammed it through. We tried to tell them. We tried to tell them, but you know what happened? We were pushed out on the steps. Many of you were there with us to experience that humiliating experience that we faced before the legislature. But anyway, we think it will probably be found unconstitutional more than likely, but what the legislature will probably do is to try to go back in and to pull all those pieces apart and try to pass them piece by piece by piece. Mm-hmm. Now you say, well, they probably will. Well, maybe they won't either. And that's up to us. Have we done our due diligence? Have we gone to the legislature and legislators here locally and talked to them, Kathy? Have we talked to them? Mm-hmm. We have or we haven't?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. Haney, have we talked to them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we've talked to them. We talked to them going to their offices, bringing them here. So they know how we feel about these kinds of things. We've made it abundantly clear how we feel. And then when we get down to the legislature, we'll be there again. Do I think they'll lock us out on the steps again? I don't think that for a second. I don't believe that'll happen. Do you? No. I think that was awful what they did, and I think they know it was awful what they did. So I don't think that's going to happen. But that will be up to us. At this point, it truly is in your court what you're going to be willing to allow them to do to you. And you have to decide how important it is. And I always say this, and I was telling the cattle board a few minutes ago, that if somebody does something stinky to somebody else, and you say, well, it's not me. It didn't affect me. They're nice to me. Well, guess what? It'll be you next. It'll be you next. And as I told them, I think of that poem. And actually, and I didn't tell y'all the author of that poem, but that was actually a Protestant minister that wrote this poem. And he actually supported the Nazi regime at first. And he has some justifiable reasons. He had been in the military in World War I. His family had been. And if anybody that knows anything about history, the Treaty of Versailles was very injurious to Germany. And it was a sort of, because Hitler was able to bring this nationalistic spirit together an evil spirit, but the whole premise behind it was the country was going to come behind something and support one person. And he supported that at first. But then whenever he realized how bad the Nazi regime was, he spoke out against it and ended up being locked in a concentration camp himself. So he wrote this poem, and it says in that poem that when they came for the Catholics, I wasn't Catholic, so I didn't speak out. And when they came for the trade unionists, I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak out. When they came for the Jews, I wasn't a Jew, and so I didn't speak out. And when they came for me, there was nobody left to speak out and stand up. And so, we have to decide. Yet when it's wrong, it's wrong. We have a huge disparity in income in this state. We have a polarized state where we have powerful people at the top and people that just get the crumbs on the bottom. And we have to decide that we're going to step up and stand up. Because if we don't do those things, I want to know who will. Who will do those things? So, really, you think, well, I don't want to take the day off, or it's not bothering me, or I made really good on my observation. It's more than that, y'all. It's more than that. It's more than that. It is fulfilling the promise to every single child in the state of Louisiana that they have the opportunity for a quality public education. Now, we know a lot of them don't partake of it, right? And some of them we feel like sometimes don't deserve it. But we have to protect the promise of it. And that's what our obligation is. Our obligation is to step up and stand up for public education. So you'll have that opportunity to come, and we need to be down there, and we need to let them know that we are not going to tolerate any half steps or half measures this time around. Save a day.
You name the day, I'm going.
Yeah. And and we need to make them think.
Let us know ahead now.
But put one on the side.
And we need to make them think that we're going to tear something up before we leave.
That's right.
I got 40 some odd that could use up.
That we have had enough. They are taking advantage of you because this is a profession that's primarily made up of women. I'm going to tell you that. And I know I'm boring the cattle people because I'm repeating some of the stuff I said to them earlier. But I had an opportunity to be at a labor leaders luncheon the other day, and Senator Adler was there, and he made some comments. First of all, I think the most egregious comment he made, and I'll just skip to that. He said that in public education, we just institutionalize people. That we tell them when they have to go to school, that we tell them what bus to ride, what classroom to sit in, what book to read, and what lunch to eat. We just institutionalize. That's why he's for vouchers, because we just institutionalize people in public education. I said, no, sir, Senator Adley. We promise. We promise you a free and appropriate public education. We promise you that you'll have a bus that will come and pick you up, and a classroom with a teacher in it, with materials and supplies that you need, and a lunch to eat. We promise you. That's our promise. That's what we promise. Now, if you don't want to partake of it, you can do a lot of things, but that never negates that we still have to protect that promise. And he said, well, you just think you're God.
Goddess.
I should have said that, huh?
I thought we were widgets in a factory.
When we bring them to the classroom, we teach them how to think. We don't tell them what to think.
Turning out.
But I stood around that room.
To the children.
I stood around that room with a bunch of labor leaders. Nobody stood up for me.
That's what I like.
That's it.
No. Why? Why did they not? Why do you think they didn't?
Because of the point.
The
Doesn't
point?
apply
Yeah.
to them.
It wasn't affecting them, and it sounded good, you know. They just nodded their head like bobbleheads. When you started thinking about what is he actually saying, it's institutionalizing people. When you start thinking about it, well, don't you want everybody to obey the law? Don't you want everybody to pay their taxes? Well, what is that? Is that not institutionalizing people? I mean, so what are we doing here? We're not teaching them what to think, we're teaching them how to think. And that's what a good teacher always does. It doesn't matter if they're in a private school or a public school. So that's just some more jargon that agenda is spewing.
Yeah, and again, I think it kind of goes back to the very nature of who we are. And, you know, and I'm, you know, and Mike's in here with us, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate everything he does every day, all day. But this is a profession that's primarily made up of women. It is. And you don't think that the reason those guys didn't stand up in that classroom, that wasn't part of it? Whenever you don't think that has anything to do? Right. You've seen it in the nursing profession, haven't you? Yeah, and I was reading something about nurses that it hasn't been too many years that a nurse, whenever a doctor would walk into the room, a nurse had to stand up.
Crap.
Yeah, I mean that's been within this century. I mean,
The
100
older
years
doctors are
later.
still like that.
Huh?
The older doctors are still like that.
Yeah, you hear this?
They're
So don't think we're not facing. So don't let's back up and just. And who said don't? You said it, honey. You said don't ever apologize for me again. Don't ever apologize for me again. Stand up for me. Don't apologize for me. Yeah. And I do think that I want y'all to realize that that's really what we're taking on. It's more than public education. I think there's a lot of gender bias in it. I think there's a lot of personal interest involved in it. And I mean we're have a myriad of fronts that we're fighting on. But you know what? I feel very, very, very positive that we're going to come out the victors in this. I really and truly do. Because you know why I think that? Because what we do is right. It's so important. If you don't stand up for those boys and girls, who will? I mean, the angels, you're on the side of the angels. I mean, you're wearing the white hat. You are the people. And because I truly believe nobody can detract from that, what you do. I mean, it is as much admission as anybody that takes a call to preach. It really and truly is, to be in a classroom and do for boys and girls. And I don't care what it is you do, Sharon, from paraprofessional to clerk to cafeteria, what we are doing is solely for the good of boys and girls. So, I really truly do think that we're on the side of the angels for this. Are y'all ready for it? I'm going to tell you. I feel very... You look at if you go back and look at the history of revolutions, you know who led revolutions? Who started revolutions? The French Revolution. You know who it was? Who?
The downtrodden.
Well, it was downtrodden, but also
The women.
the women.
Oh, women. Oh,
The
suffrage.
women. The Russian Revolution. The women.
Russian.
Even the Civil War, a lot of the reasons it ended is because the women said,
Really?
enough of this. It's women. It's women that do those things. And I think while you are picking on us because we're women, you may have gotten more than you bargained for. Right? Because when it comes push comes to who will stand up?
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Yeah, we're not loud mouths.
We just want.
Who cares?
And when it comes to kids, what? We stand up, right? When it comes to your children not being fed, and that's what happened in the French Revolution. You remember? You remember Marie Antoinette? What it was the famous line?
Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake.
We're
And
going to
what-
be ready for them. They're just not going to be ready for us.
Say it again.
We're going to be ready for them. They're just not going to be ready for us.
Yes. And we are not apologizing. So
Bastardized.
we're proud, don't you think?